Getting the smile and confidence you've been dreaming about, all from the comfort of your home, isn't a total mystery with Bite Clear Aligners. Just don't be surprised if all your friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Bite Clear Aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
I just realized I don't know how we want to start this. I mean, I think we just kind of did. Welcome back, everybody. This is Scarred for Life, the podcast where we reopen old wounds by taking a look back at the films that scarred us as kids. I'm one of your hosts, Terry.
I'm your other host, Mary Beth.
And this time it's a little bit different. We don't have a special guest. We're just sort of like wrapping up the year. Mm-hmm. And looking back at the movies this year that really kind of affected us.
Yeah.
And like looking forward in the new year.
Yeah.
So like our next two episodes are going to be a little bit different because there's this one, and then you'll come back next week for some special guests as we look back on the decade.
I forgot a lot of things that came out in the past decade.
Yeah, me too.
Doing research for the list, I was like, oh my God, I don't remember anything from like the first half of the decade.
I know. I was looking back at like some of the Wikipedia lists and stuff and thinking, man, I didn't realize that this came out then. And it's just amazing the stuff that's kind of changed over the last 10 years. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that next time.
Next week. I'm really excited to hear what our guests have come up with that one. Yeah, but this is just the two of us.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Anyway.
So before we get to kind of like the year wrap up, what have you watched recently, Mary Beth?
Wow, what have I watched recently? I watched Black Christmas.
Me too.
I know we have different opinions on it.
We do, but I want to hear from you.
Okay. I absolutely loved it. I mean,
yeah.
That does not mean in me saying that does not mean that there are not problems and that there are some issues with the movie, but I think I can look past those because this is a movie that is all about female rage and like accurately representing that in a way that like really encapsulates, I think it's like post Kavanaugh stuff, really encapsulates this kind of rage that has been building and building, and it expresses that rage in the most unsubtle way possible, which I think is fucking a badass. Like,
yeah,
people were annoyed that they have like the kind of Me Too speak and like a lot of like kind of woke dialect or dialogue. But honestly, like as someone who just graduated with my master's from like a pretty big campus, people talk like that. And like it might be annoying to you, but like that's actually what a lot of college dialogue is like right now. And it is a little bit cringy, I will admit, but like it is not really that far off from the conversations I've heard on at campuses. So I mean, I think hats off to them for those dialogues, like the conversations people have about white patriarchal like writers and like rewriting the canon, like literary canon. I know it's a very brief part of it, but like that was a big part of my actual experience in grad school and in trying to like reassess what it means, like what classic film means and why is this canon the one that we consider classics. I don't know. I just like a lot of that felt very accurate, and even if it's cringy, like that is the way a lot of like young women talk on college campuses, which I think it's great to see that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sorority girls are always depicted as like dumb blondes who are drunk all the time, and like I'm sorry, I'm like rambling. I have so many feelings about this, but like so in the slasher and the usual slasher that we see, like the original Black Christmas, like sorority girls are ripe for the picking, and there is a very stereotypical representation of them as drinking, as having sex, and I think this is the slasher for the new decade. I mean, people might not like it, and maybe it's not even a slasher, but these are what girls look like now, and I think we're trying to rewrite what a final girl means. We're rewriting what it means to fight back against patriarchal control, and I think it's a really important film that kind of tries to rewrite the generic tropes we're so used to. And I know that's nothing new. Like a lot of directors have tried to do that and subvert tropes, and this one did it in such an obvious way that I think people were thrown off by it. But I was really excited by it, and I think I've seen a lot of comments about how they handled trauma, especially the main character Riley's trauma, and how that she shouldn't have been forced by her friends to fight back and be ready when they say she should be ready, which I partially agree with. I think that is a very like intense way to address trauma, and like it's very important to have support in that situation, but also like having your friend force you is kind of, I don't know. It's a very weird way to portray it, and I know the point was like sisterhood, but at the same time, it did seem to kind of like be forcing a survivor to do something that maybe she wasn't wanting to do.
Yeah. On the opposite side of that, though, I mean, movies don't have to reflect the perfect world, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like that kind of pushing from your friends is kind of a normal reaction in some ways. Like I don't feel like, I mean, yes, is it, if you look back at it, yes, it probably isn't the best way to handle trauma, but is it a realistic thing that women have to go through and men and assault survivors have to go through with that kind of push from people? I mean, I think so.
Yeah, I think I was more on the positive side about the representation because like, to be very real, I've been sexually assaulted, and I wish I had someone on my side like that. And like, yeah, it's pushy,
right?
But I think I could have personally, and this is my personal opinion. Obviously,
right,
everyone
all of it.
heals differently, and everyone needs different things like, when they're dealing with PTSD. But I think having someone to tell you and try to help push you out of it, I think, is important, or at least someone who supports you. And like, the thing is, in that whole scenario, they believed her, which is, I think, the most important part. And I think I just feel like it's such an important thing for young female horror fans to see women being treated like actual creatures, like not as creatures, but as like actual human beings. Yeah. That like, and another thing I was thinking about was like how the female body is treated so differently in this movie, and how it's like there are a lot of deaths, like it's a lot of death of women, but like the screaming isn't like orgasmic, it's full of rage. And I think I don't know how to describe how I got that difference, but for this, like, screaming had a different like vibe around it. The screaming that we usually think of as like as orgasmic, almost sexual, felt like so much more angry, right? And I think that is like another big difference and in this movie as opposed to like other slashers. And I think what it comes down to is labeling this movie as Black Christmas was its detriment.
Yes. Boy, there's a lot that there's a lot of things I was thinking about as you were talking that I
didn't mean to just like take that out of control.
No,
I just like, I think the conversation around it right now is really toxic from from you or anyone. I just think a lot of people are being very shitty and like calling Sophia to call a cunt on Twitter and like going after her. And I think that like it's just absolutely disgusting the way people are reacting to this movie.
Well, it's sort of, I mean, it's ironic, and I mean, I'm not the first person to point this out, but like everyone's like, I don't need this movie to be this vocal, but you just called her the C word. So,
Yeah.
like, obviously, it does need to be talked about still. Obviously, it still is an issue, because otherwise you wouldn't have such a strong reaction, inappropriate
Exactly.
reaction
Well,
to this movie.
and like when I was in the theater, like I saw it at like 12 p.m. on a Saturday, so it wasn't as crowded. But there were still people. There were, I could like very like easily identifiable men scoffing at parts of it, and I was like, and I was laughing. I was alone and I was laughing, and I thought these parts were so funny, and people were scoffing at parts. I'm like, oh, this is not for you, friend. Like, ooh, no.
Well, and I think that's sort of like, I mean, that kind of goes into the bigger conversation that's happening right now in fandoms, is that not necessarily everything has to be for you, dude.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so going back to one of the things you said about how the dialogue, some people see it as like too woke or whatever, or like not accurate. And you said that you think, as someone that's coming out of, you know, the graduate program, that it is. I completely agree. And I actually, when you were saying that, I went to go search, because I actually got a tweet from someone when I said I was about to go watch Black Christmas, and it's Derek Sykes, and they say, as someone in college, this movie reads much better than many old people I've seen talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that this is, people may scoff at it, the older generation may scoff at it, but I think that this is the way we're talking now. And
so many people talk about that and are tuned into these issues and are trying to address it all the time. And it is frustrating when it's like, oh, it's too woke, no one talks like that, it's cringy. I'm like, well, maybe young people are actually like really trying to be more political in their actions and really want to address these things. I mean, we had petitions at University of Chicago for professors that like, acting similar to like Carrie Elwes' character did. And it's just like, I don't know. It just is frustrating when people want to like sign things. That's not the right phrase. What is the phrase I'm trying to think of? Not sign off. Whatever. Basically dismiss. Dismiss is what I like. Dismiss the film, and it's just like I said before. Ultimately, I just think the title really fucked it over.
Yes. So I think that, like, I didn't really. I mean, we had kind of had a conversation offline about this, but this movie didn't really resonate with me in the last third.
Yes. I
really enjoyed the first two acts. I really thought it was. I wanted to spend more time with the sorority sisters. I thought they were very entertaining and very interesting, and felt like real people. I loved the one, I don't know her name, but the one that kind of runs in the beginning and is like, oh my gosh, I have a test in 10 minutes. I can't find my Diva cup.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Franny, I think.
Is that her name? I loved,
so.
I loved her kind of character. And I love the activist, friend for Riley. Like, these are, I enjoyed them so much. And I'll be perfectly honest, when I went in, I was expecting there to be a lot more quote unquote woke dialogue and stuff because everyone was bitching about it, but it didn't really stick out to me. And so that kind of surprised me. Like, obviously there's some dialogue there, and there was one exchange, I can't remember exactly what it was about, but one exchange that felt a little too on the nose for me. But like, for the most part, the way they talked, this is how I've seen kids and college students talking right now.
Yep. And I just like, I think there are some times where they try to like cram, especially towards the third act. I think they try to cram a lot of like the toxic masculinity terms in at the end, and I was like, ooh. Well, that's a lot. Like a couple of, like you said, on the nose comments where I was like, ay. But
yeah, I mean, in some ways, I did find some of it a little inelegant. Oh my god, inelegant in its like choice of discussion. But at the end of the day, that's not the part that bothered me. I mean, I was thinking about, as I was watching it, a movie that came out last year, Assassination Nation.
Mm-hmm. I have not seen it.
Oh my god, Mary Beth, you really need to see it.
I know. I know this.
It kind of tackles a similar theme.
Okay.
And it is, if you think this movie is like blunt, that movie is like a baseball bat to the head. Like, it is angry. It is pissed off at the way things are going. But it shares a lot of the same kind of DNA that I saw in this 2018 Black Christmas. I just... All right, we're going to have to little talk about this because so if you don't want to know anything at all about the last third, just like skip ahead.
Well, in the show notes, we'll mark when we stop talking about Black Christmas so you can skip ahead to that.
Because like we got to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we do. So
all
sorry
right.
guys, just check the show notes to figure out when you can skip. So I would skip now. All right, so the end of the movie goes into like this kind of cult supernatural angle to it. And that is where I got lost. It completely lost me. And the movie had set up this event in the very beginning. Like, there's definitely some, like, very obvious clues that it's going to head in this direction. It just really kind of muddled the theme for me. Okay.
Except for one aspect of it. I did like the fact that, in a way, there's, like, the subtext of this scene where they are basically... taking pledges and through this ritual making them kind of these mindless slaves that are going to go forward, and they're going to place them in areas outside of the college in, like, you know, very powerful places. And I mean, there's an obvious message there about how organizations that are focused on the kind of like toxicity and like shaping people into a toxic role are going to put these people out in the world of power. I mean, you look at like secret societies and who is like part of them in college and now it has like positions of power in the world. So you can like,
it's fucking weird.
It is. So there's that aspect of it that I thought worked really well. It just sort of like, I don't know. I was all on board with this like very grounded story that takes a turn into black sludge pouring out of a bust.
Yeah, I think there's a reading there where you could basically seem like they took the responsibility out of like a lot of the people's hands. But like in my mind, not every single guy was under the control, and like the guys, like the two like frat bros in charge, it didn't seem like they were under the influence of this black magic cult. And so in my head, it was like the rapists spreading like their lies to other people and how those lies infect other men and build like basically an army of women haters. Mm-hmm. That's a very deep reading for something that probably isn't that deep, but that's how I saw it, as like the kind of toxicity that leaks from rapists and like how it can really infiltrate the minds of others and turn them against women without really any second thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on with that. I completely agree. That's how I read it. I just I don't know. Like, I guess
that's fair. I mean, like, also, like, just because I had that reading doesn't mean you have to like it. Like,
no,
it is very like out of left field and very like whoa. The tone of this, like you said, the tone of this movie is completely changed. It's very strange, and like the final like battle, which I fucking loved. I thought it was awesome and hilarious.
I was laughing.
It's so good. With like she had the menorah. It's so good.
I liked the finale. I liked the first about 2/3 maybe.
Yeah.
It just and like I said, I love the subtext, the stuff that you just caught on with, like that you just talked about with the theme.
Yeah.
I love that. I didn't like maybe, I guess, the execution of it.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that 100%. It is like a very jarring way to end it from the way like the whole thing goes beforehand.
But I will say, kind of piggybacking off of something that you said earlier, when I went to go, I saw this opening night, and the theater was not very packed, but there was a lot of younger girls, teenagers in the movie. And I went to go see it with my two best friends, who are both women. And you know, in the beginning, when they're kind of like doing the little song and dance at the frat, my friends are like throwing their fists in the air, like, yeah, right on. And I hear people behind me talking about just like going, yeah, fuck yeah, and like talking about that. So like, it obviously. There's a resonance here, and I think that is so important, regardless of what I find are flaws in the movie. The fact that I'm sitting in a theater full of teenagers and a lot of women that are, you know, cheering these badass bitches on. Just it was awesome to see. And it kind of proved the point of its necessity in some ways.
Exactly. And like I even cried at some parts because parts of it resonated with my own experience with being sexually assaulted in college. And like I just don't I've just seen like, and like if a woman doesn't like this movie, that is totally like fine. And if a man doesn't like this movie, again, fine. But a lot of the reviews I've read written by men, it's like, this is not for you. And I really want to commend all of the sites out there that have been asking women to review this. Or like basically any like non-cis, like not a cis heterosexual man to write a review of this. I think that is so important to like prioritize that, like, women's perspectives on this movie, because this is ultimately a movie made by women, written by women, for women.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm sorry if you feel that like that's alienating to you, but also like maybe realize that like it shouldn't feel as alienating as it does. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like some people are just so closed off to like the idea of like any kind of woke feminism stuff and like addressing issues of masculinity, and it's like, I'm being attacked. Like, no, you are not being attacked. Like, you should maybe just watch this and have a better understanding of where maybe women are coming from.
Like, I mean, I'm not trying to compare the two movies, but in terms of like bluntness, maybe, I don't see much different in the dialogue and the kind of overt discussions in this movie as I saw in Get Out a couple years ago.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't think this movie is as elegant as that movie. I think it's a little, I think, like I said, I think there's problems with it, and I'm not comparing the quality from my perspective to Get Out. But in terms of like, I think it's interesting that everyone is calling out, because I've read a lot of reviews from straight white men on this movie, and they all focus so much on this woke dialogue or the fact that it's, you know, it's not subtle. And I'm like, neither was Get Out. I mean, you literally had a person in that movie saying, you know, like, oh, I would vote for Obama a third term. Or you have like the people at the party literally quoting the kind of subtle racist dialogue back to the main character.
Yep.
So that is as blunt as this movie is. So I think it's telling that there are people that are talking about the dialogue in this movie that might not have brought it up or have championed it in a movie like Get Out. I
agree. And I mean, like, I think Get Out, outside of critics, definitely got as much, probably just as much, if not more shit than Christmas. No, absolutely. But like, in terms of, like you said, with critical reception, I think I absolutely agree. And my friend Anita, who has a really good podcast called We Really Like Her, plugging for them. She had a really good, she tweeted.
What was her podcast?
We Really Like Her.
Oh, We Really Like, okay.
Yeah.
You're saying like, We Really Like Her, like.
No, her really podcast is really, yeah. But I just tweeted like a small thread about Black Christmas and how important I thought it was. And she goes, women have always had to be subtle. Maybe it's time to fuck subtlety and let us scream in everyone's faces.
Yes.
Like, it's time, motherfuckers. Like,
yes.
And she's so right. Like, it's time for this fucking war cry, and we should be allowed to scream as loud as we want and fuck subtlety. Like, let us be messy. Like, women are messy, like just like men, and men get to make messy movies all the time that aren't good, and they still get directing jobs. Like, fuck it, let them make a messy movie. And that messy movie was a fucking awesome movie to me. So like, yeah, I just have a lot of feelings and a lot of anger, and I had a panic attack yesterday because I was so mad. I'm not joking. It was just getting so heated. I need to stop reading reviews online because I was just like, fuck you, and I was getting very angry.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to have this discussion, because like I see so many reviews out there from the male perspective that I don't feel kind of encapsulates what the movie's trying to go for.
Yeah, and I think the loyalty to the name Black Christmas and the idea that it was a slasher really threw people off. The PG-13, I think the PG-13 rating did fuck it a little bit. I totally understand why it was PG-13 and it wanting to appeal, but I think just like the lack of the gore was a little bit sad for me because I'm disgusting. But
no, it was for me too, because like there's so many things where they either cut away from it, or they only show like a portion of it, and like don't like. There's one girl that's found with like is it an axe or something in her face?
It looks
can't
like
even
an
quite tell.
axe or like a piece of glass or something.
And I'm like, okay, so we're just going to like hint at it, and you could tell that cuts were made in this movie.
Yeah, and I think so. Again, like in my like intensely feminist reading of this film, that is not even closely related to like trying to appeal to different audiences. It felt to me very interesting in the context of slashers always wanting to show the brutalization of the female body, and in this one they kind of stayed away from that.
That's true.
I know why, like from an actual like logistical level, they wanted to make it PG-13 and appeal to younger people, but it is an interesting way to kind of look at it as avoiding that entire brutalization of the female body and like those really weird like phallic deaths. Even though they have like there's an icicle stabbing, like obviously that's pretty phallic.
Right.
That was a pretty cool kill, I will say.
Yeah.
But I feel like some more gore would have done them good. Yeah. But that's okay.
I understand that there's probably like a marketing reason for using Black Christmas, to like drum up excitement, but I really wish it wasn't called Black Christmas because it doesn't.
Well, that's
it doesn't.
Oh, sorry.
I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's just it doesn't really have any of the hallmarks of that movie. Like, yeah, I mean, you can make like a case like the Suspiria remake from last year. Like it totally blew up the story of what Dario Argento did back in the 70s. But you could see the DNA there, and outside of the fact that this is a sorority and it's dealing with a pertinent issue, because back then there was the whole idea of the abortion. I don't think it was. Yeah. I don't think it's any coincidence that it happened after. I want to say like a year or two after Roe v. Wade.
Okay. Yeah.
So like there's that kind of aspect to it, but other than that, there's really no connection.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the hate it got before it even came out was because it was connected to a classic that a lot of, sorry guys, but fanboys were like attached to. It just got so much vitriol from people who are like, feminist slasher. And it's just, people shouldn't have that reaction in the fucking first place. But no. It just like, I think this whole thing, I mean, I know that people are terrible, but this, like, just the discussion on this movie is just, it made me very upset.
It's made me very upset from the very first time they
and I think I ignored it for a while because I was like, I can't inject myself into this because it's going to make me feel like shit. And I was like, I just know I'm excited for it, and I want to let that excitement ride. And I love Sophia Takal. I love April Wolf. I was like, just need to let it ride and, like, be excited for them and just to keep it positive. Yeah. And now it's not, I just like, it makes me upset.
Well, every single time that the movie got brought up in conversation, or, first it was that they're making a Black Christmas remake. Oh. And then it was the fact that it was being written and directed by two women. Oh. And then the trailer came out and people are bitching about the trailer showing too much. And then there's like the PG, like this movie has just been, every single time it's in dialogue has been shat on.
Well, and then Joe Bob Briggs targeted it.
Oh, God. Even though he says he didn't, he totally did.
It was because he retweeted that article about the movie and put that, he quote tweeted it and said that. And I was like, even if you aren't technically talking about it, you did it above this article. Like, are you just an idiot? Probably. Right. But, like, you are directly attacking a new horror female filmmaker. And, like, you don't understand the optics of what that looks like. And how you're encouraging trolls at this point. And, like, well, I mean, a lot of people push back against him, which I appreciate, and I'm so glad I follow the right people on Twitter who, like, were pushing back. But, like, God, I just feel an immense sense of, like, not pride is not the right word, but just, like, I'm so excited for Sophia Takal and April Wolf, and, like, I just feel... I don't even know what the right word is for how I feel about just them, like, championing this and, like, really taking it as best they can and just like doing what they wanted to do and supporting their vision through all the bullshit. And like, I respect it. I think that's what it is. Like, I just respect them so much as filmmakers and as creators. And like, I don't know. They fucking swung for it, and maybe they missed a couple times, but you know what? They fucking did it, and I just like, that's all you can really, you just be proud of that. And the fact that it got like big distribution, a movie like this. Like,
right.
There's a similar movie called MFA. Have you seen it, Terry?
No, it's been on my queue to watch.
So it does a lot of this, like Black Christmas and MFA do a lot of the similar things, and
it's rape revenge, isn't it?
Yes, and it's so I actually would want to write a whole thing about how Black Christmas 2019 is a rape revenge movie, but I won't get into that now. But MFA is much more directly a rape revenge movie. It's not, and it's on a college campus. There's a lot of dialogue. It's a very similar dialogue done very differently. And they're both, I think it would be an amazing double feature. I think they are amazing companion pieces. MFA was directed by a woman, Natalia Leet. I think it has a lot.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
They're basically in conversation with one another, and I think they're very good films. And so if you want more movies like Black Christmas that you like, something like Black Christmas, really check out MFA, because that's very good. And I would need to see Assassination Nation too.
Yes, I think you really would like that.
And I think that Assassination Nation was just as decisive as Black Christmas.
Oh, it totally was.
So,
but like, I don't think it got as much vitriol because it was directed by a man.
Well, and also it was like super indie. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And like, again, it doesn't have this like a franchise behind it or any kind of like association with any other like past film history stuff. And I think that probably was part of why it didn't get as much vitriol, but definitely being directed by a man had something to do with it, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. So that's Black Christmas, y'all.
That's Black Christmas. Please go see it before you make a judgment on it.
Yeah.
You're allowed, and this, you know what? You are allowed to dislike it, but you are not allowed to be an asshole about why you dislike it.
Absolutely. Exactly.
But that's the thing.
Here you go. We just had a nice conversation coming from two different angles of it. And
exactly. And like, that's the thing I think people don't understand.
We still love each other, so.
Exactly. Like, that's the thing I don't think people understand. It's like, I don't care that you dislike it. I just don't want you to be a dick about it.
Right.
Like, dislike things all you want.
Dislike it for the right reasons.
Yeah, exactly. People. Like, dislike it and have a conversation and not just be like, it's fucking trash because of this, and I'm not going to listen to your opinion. It's like, well, that's how you start like, this is why there's so many problems online. No one wants to just like engage in any kind of discourse or dialogue. It's just like a lot of screaming, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's almost as if like it's like art representing real life.
Yeah, for real.
Bunch of screaming and anger and yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
I guess there are other things we could talk about besides Black Christmas.
No, I think it's a good discussion.
Yeah.
And I think it's a necessary discussion. And I was really curious because how you felt of it, because I like I said, we had a little bit of an offline conversation, and I think it's important to see that you can have two different perspectives on it that I don't know aren't.
Yeah, and like that are like, it's like very much like an agree to disagree thing in like a polite way, like in a way that we can talk about it and understand each other and not be mad at the other person for not liking it or for liking it. Like,
yeah,
it's important.
It's art, man.
Yeah, it's art, man. Anyway, have you been watching anything else, Terry? Or is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we jump into like a year in review?
Well, I did go to PAX.
So
PAX
cool.
Unplugged. And I mean, it's a board game, so like it's a board game convention, so it's not exactly movie related, but I did get to see a couple really cool games that are either out or coming out that I think if you are a fan of board games and or horror, you might be interested in. Like,
cool.
One called Abomination.
Okay.
And it is out now. You can order it. I saw it on Amazon. I'm thinking about ordering it. And it takes place in Paris after the Frankenstein story. And you play as scientists that are trying to make a human body, like bring back a creature to be a companion for the creature from Frankenstein. And so you are like competing. The players are all competing against each other to build their creation first. And I I didn't get to play it. They weren't showcasing it, but I did see a lot of the stuff behind it. But basically, I hear that it's very dark. So like it's very grisly because you're doing what Frankenstein had to do in the movie. You're going out to cemeteries and like getting body parts and trying to select the best parts, and you can kill people in the dark alley and use their parts. Like, so it's very like nihilistic in that regard. And I guess the art is very graphic in some cases.
Oh boy. Okay.
But like the idea of trying, it's almost like a worker placement game where you have to like spend your resources in different areas to try to like get different body parts and like create your creature before the other side can. So there's like strategy in placing your workers in specific areas and all that kind of stuff. But the thematic aspect of it looked really cool, and it just looks like a fun game. And
I'm looking at pictures of it right now, and it's pretty gross.
Yeah, and it's weird because like the cover of the box is very kind of bright and cartoony, but like if you see some of the like cards that are in it, I mean it's
pretty gross.
Dismemberment and decapitations, and like bodies will if you don't use them, if they start to deteriorate and decompose. So like it's definitely a very kind of gross game, but I think for horror fans that love board games, it probably is going to be right up your alley.
Cool. I just sent it to my boyfriend. I'm like, hey, we need another board game.
And then this other game that was like the biggest hit of the show, that I wasn't as big on, but I think people will love, is called Sanctum.
Okay.
And it's coming out in February, and it's basically Diablo the board game.
Oh, okay.
So like you have different classes, and you're basically marching on to kill the big Diablo-esque monster, and you kill creatures and get loot and level up and open up abilities and stuff. It's just so it's very much what you would expect kind of a board game centered around Diablo to be.
That seems just way too complicated.
It actually isn't. Like,
you played it?
I did get to play that game. They were demoing it, and we managed to get in. And I guess it was the most demoed game of PAX. They opened up its own little room for it, because people were hankering for it, and they had like a limited amount of copies, and they sold out like in the first day. Like it just.
Okay.
It's a big hit. Comes out in February.
Okay.
My biggest complaint about it was that it's competitive against each other, not cooperative, but it's not really competitive in that I felt very alone playing it. Like you don't really there's no real interactions between your characters. You just sort of like, I guess, try to get the better loot and survive at the end.
Okay.
But so I thought that was a little
Okay.
But I'm in the minority. A lot of people really loved it, and I think that if you like Diablo and you want a board game representation, this is probably one of the best kind of semi-adaptations of it. It's not in any way related to Diablo, but it's Diablo.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean that's it for me. Did you see anything else?
I haven't seen anything else, but I do want to plug a book from this year.
Yes.
That I haven't finished it yet. I'm about I think I'm like almost halfway through it. It's called The Reddening.
Yes, I have that.
Have you read it?
No, but
okay.
I ordered it.
The Reddening by Adam Neville.
Yes,
it is. Oh, sorry.
No, the book just looked beautiful. That's why I ordered it. I'm totally judge a book by its cover.
Oh yes. So this is by the author who wrote The Ritual, which is made into the Netflix movie.
Oh shit, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so he writes a lot of folk horror. So The Reddening is British folk horror, and so if you guys like folk horror, you need to check this out. Like, I'm only halfway through, but it's already bonkers. It's about like weird cult in the British countryside on this like the British seaside, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on. People painted red, something underground. It's very Lovecraftian. There's a lot of like feeling senses of dread and feeling very small. And it is absolutely beautiful. The writing is so good and it's very compelling. And it came out this year. So I would urge everyone to pick it up if you can. Even if you just want to get it on Kindle, it's like $4 on Kindle. It's totally worth it.
I saw someone tweeting about it, and because they had ordered a copy from Neville's website, and it comes like in a hardback and signed and stuff. And I saw it, and I was like, that cover is gorgeous.
Yes.
I must have this book. And so I just ordered it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it is sitting on my desk right in front of me.
I can't stop reading it. Like, it's one of these books that I'm reading while I'm walking home from my commute, which I never ever do. And like, it's so stupid. Guys, don't do that. But like, I can't put it down. It's so good. But it's like, I'm trying to put it down so I don't finish it quickly. It's one of these books that like I want to devour and both not be done with ever.
I love those kind of books.
I know, it's amazing. So please check it out. If you guys are looking for something to read or a gift to even give to a horror fan, it's like the perfect book.
It's gorgeous, the book.
The cover is beautiful. It's creepy as fuck, but it's gorgeous. It's bright red. It's very good. So please give it a read.
I'm glad to hear it's really good because, and I totally didn't realize it was by the guy that wrote the Ritual.
Yeah.
The Ritual is so good.
It's on Reddit, one of like this horror like subreddits I'm in. They were recommending folk horror books, and I haven't really read any folk horror, so I'm excited that this was my first one to really jump into.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So now that we've talked about all that.
Yeah.
So before we start talking about movies, do we want to just talk about like our years as writers and as podcasters? And
yes. This has been quite a year, Mary Beth.
It has been quite a year. Boy, oh boy, has it been a year.
I like to think back about the year as we're moving into the new one, and I mean, you know, so much is going like a shit fire in like the world right now, but there's been some really good things that happened this year, and some of them are going to be a little sappy because I mean. I kind of met you this year.
Yay.
I wasn't sure when we started following each other, but this was the year that I felt like I got to know you.
Yes.
And I'm super thankful that I did because this has been a ride over the last few months, and I can't wait to see where we go with it.
I know.
I'm so glad that we get to chat a couple times a week about movies.
It's been like realizing how similar we are as people, and like and just kind of like, sorry, 1 second. Just like getting to know each other, and finally, like I've always wanted to do a podcast like this, so finally getting a chance to do a podcast has been amazing, and especially with someone like you, and it has just been like a great experience. And like you said, I can't wait to see like where we go from here.
Yeah.
Yay.
So, I mean, that was big.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one. Starting this podcast is pretty big.
And then this also involved you, but for me personally, the fact that for Pride Month, I managed to get 30 other people to help raise over $2,000 for the Trevor Project.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, the month of Pride, it blew me away, the support, and I loved reading everyone's articles, your article, everyone. That was like, I didn't think would be topped this year. And then it did get topped by this podcast and some other things. But like, for like, I felt really good about that. And I felt really happy that people came together to do that. And hopefully it'll be even bigger next year. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. I think it will be. I think it was a great start. I got my master's degree this year.
Yes.
That's pretty cool, I guess.
That is cool.
Got my master's degree. I think I've really started like writing a lot more for like different places and really pitching myself this year.
Yes.
Which was really exciting. I got to write for some big sites, which has just been like really awesome. I feel like I really grew as a writer. This year was like a big year for me growing as a writer and really realizing how much I like it and enjoy it. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's been pretty, I mean, like, freelancing is hard, and I'm glad I have a full-time job on top of it.
Yeah. Because
it sucked when I was just a freelancer. But I just really have, like, come a long way in terms of my writing and stuff, so I'm pretty happy about that.
You have. I love it whenever there's a new article coming out from you, and I'm not just saying that because you're doing a podcast together. I really, I'm really proud of you. I love that you got your master's degree because that's something that has been on the back of my mind and want to do, and to see you do it, and I love it.
Thank
I told you guys it's going to be sappy. And I mean, I guess for me, the other big thing that happened was that something that I've been wanting for so many years to get Rotten Tomatoes approved.
Right. Oh my God, that's right. That was this year.
It was.
Oh my God, this year has felt fake.
I know. It's something that I'd been wanting for years, and like I had looked up the process of applying for it for so many years, even though I wasn't doing as much writing as I have been recently. And then the fact that it happened, it literally like I cried so hard when it happened.
Aww.
It was one of those things. It was like a goal of mine, and at 38 to like feel like I kind of started life anew.
Yeah.
This year has been pretty crazy after some kind of shitty last few years. So I don't know. It's just this year on a personal level has just felt really good.
I'm also very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Hey guys, Sappy, we warned you.
Yeah, I told you guys. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we talk movies?
I don't think so.
All right.
Movies now.
So, the whole point of this episode, before we talk about our favorites of this year, we kind of wanted to like talk about some movies that we saw this year that are probably going to come out in 2020, hopefully, that we saw at festivals and whatnot that we think you guys should add to your list. Do you want to start, Mary Beth?
Yes. Okay. So I was lucky enough this year also to cover a lot more festivals remotely and actually in person. It was a great year for that. And so I saw a lot of really good movies that either haven't gotten distribution yet or have distribution and they're coming out next year. But some of the favorites I saw were The Last to See Them, which is an Italian film, which is basically like the moments leading up to when like a serial killer comes and murders a family. Mm-hmm. And it's very slow. It's not necessarily like a traditional horror movie, but it's beautifully done. And I think just beautifully shot, and it's very sad in a weird way. It's like very melancholy. I enjoyed it. I loved it so much, and I don't know when it's getting distribution, but I hope it does soon. Have you seen that one, Terry? Did you get a chance? I saw it. Okay. Did you see it at Cinepocalypse too?
Yeah, I got a screener for that one.
Okay.
You saw it in the theater, right?
Yes,
Cinepocalypse? I did. See, I kind of wish that I had, because it was a little too slow for me.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, that's fair. That's like a lot of reviews I've seen have said it's really slow. It really worked for me.
Yeah.
But I get like why it wouldn't for some other people.
Well, and it won like I think the audience award or something.
It did. It won some sort of award. Yeah.
At Cinepocalypse. So I mean, I definitely agree. Definitely check it out for sure.
Yeah, and then when I was at TIFF, I saw a lot of really good stuff. But the two I really wanted to push are The Vigil, which is a story about Orthodox Jewish possession, which I think is awesome because, again, it's like I think I've mentioned this in an episode where we talked about Exorcism of Emily Rose, but it's just taking a possession film in a different context, not Christianity, not Catholicism, which I think is really important, and it's well done. And then the other one I saw at TIFF is The Vast of Night.
Yeah, I really want to see both of those.
Yeah, The Vast of Night is like absolutely insanely beautiful, and I can't wait to see it again. But that was one that I was just like,
what is that one about?
So they hear they hear a strange radio signal, and they're trying to figure out. It's like a radio producer and a woman trying to figure out like what is causing the sound, and it's kind of like UFO-y and like X-Files-y and Twilight Zone-y, and trying to like figure out what's going on. And it's shot in black and white, and there's a lot of really awesome tracking shots that are like beautiful tracking shots, and it's just like absolutely beautifully made. And so if you're into like radio drama and old Twilight Zone episodes, it's like very much up your alley. It's gorgeous.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So those are the three. I've seen a lot of amazing movies this year, but those are the three I really want to push because maybe like I think Vast of Night has distribution for next year. I think Amazon picked it up. But
okay, good.
The other two, I don't think they have it yet, and so I'm hoping that I'm somehow putting some good vibes into the void to get them distribution because they deserve it. I want more people to see them, and I want to be able to see them again. Really selfishly, I want to be able to see them again.
Right.
But yeah, those are the three I wanted to talk about. What about you?
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I wrote down a whole bunch, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. So if you listened to last week's episode, we had Eric Power and Andreas Peterson on,
Yes.
and they have their animated horror film, Attack of the Demons, which is still seeking distribution. And I just want to, going off of what you said, I kind of want to put that out in the ether that maybe it'll get picked up, because it's a blast. I mean, we don't need to really talk about it too much because we spent a whole last episode talking about it, but just, I hope that it gets picked up and more people are able to see it.
Yes.
And I'm not just saying that because they were guests. I really dug this film.
I do too. It's beautiful. It's absolutely like, and just talking to them about how long it took to animate it, it's really, it's absolutely gorgeous. The detail, even like the details in that film, like the Fangoria magazines made out of paper, it's just amazing. Like the attention to detail they have, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that they could do the stuff that they do with just paper. I mean, it's amazing. So the other ones I wanted to talk about briefly were The Swerve.
How did I forget The Swerve?
Yeah, The Swerve. Completely destroyed me as I saw this one. This was also, like, I want to say, Cinepocalypse movie.
It was Cinepocalypse, yeah.
Yeah. And directed by Dean Kapsalis, who, spoiler alert, is probably going to be on our show in the future. I haven't talked to you about it yet.
Yeah,
Mary
what
Beth,
the hell?
I
don't remember your...
I did reach out to him this weekend.
Cool. Well,
and he's down.
Dropping a exclusive.
Yeah, there you go. I hadn't even talked to Mary Beth about it. It was like in the middle of the night, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to him. And I did. And
is it ambient?
He was like, yep, it was ambient Terry. And he was like, yeah, this sounds great. I want to do it. So that will hopefully happen. But yeah, so The Swerve is about this woman who is basically kind of self-destructing over the course of a movie. And it's just... It was quite a gut punch.
That's like a very light way to put this movie. It is just like an absolute gut punch. It's just, I don't even know how else to describe it. Like, it is tragically beautiful and upsetting. Yeah. Whew, it's a lot, but it's gorgeously done. Like, it's a movie about mental illness that is not exploitative and is just like painfully real and painful.
It's
experience.
Very painful.
It's awful. Like, it's awful. Like, in terms of the emotional ride, but I think it's done in such an effective, amazing way. But it isn't. Not everyone should watch it, I don't think.
No, there definitely will be trigger warnings attached to that movie. But like, it just, to see like this woman whose support system just keeps failing her, and to see the kind of way that she's trying to reach out for any kind of human emotion and compassion from people, and to see it constantly just blowing up in her face, just
just absolutely ridiculous. Like,
it's painful,
but amazing. It's like doing a hard job selling it, as
I know, right?
There's like no way to talk about it that like isn't just like it's gonna fucking rip my heart out of my chest and shoved it back into my mouth. But it's beautiful. It's beautifully done.
Yeah. And then one other movie that I will focus on. When I saw it was called Mute, M-U-T-E. And it's now called Sword of God.
Is this the one from Cinepocalypse, the Polish movie?
Yes, it is another movie from Cinepocalypse.
Okay, I was like, Sword of God, what the I don't remember. It was I saw it when it was also called Mute.
Yeah.
And interesting. That is a very interesting name change.
Yes. Did you see it?
I did.
And what did you think of it?
It was fine.
Okay.
I think it was beautiful. The cinematography is beautiful, and I think it was like a beautifully made film. I wasn't as sold on the story. I was kind of bored by it. But someone gave me, my friend Sam gave me some really interesting context behind the movie and why it's actually really important. Because in Poland, it's a lot of like anti-fascist, like, or not anti-fascist, like fascist government and fascist like leadership trying to basically tell people you can't speak badly about God, and this whole movie is pretty much like bashing Catholicism. So this movie is actually very daring and very important in terms of like the Polish cultural context of right now. So I appreciate that, actually.
That's fascinating.
After she told me that, I was like, okay, I have a newfound appreciation for it. I mean, I still, like, the story is iffy to me, but in terms of what the director was trying to do in Poland, I think it's actually really cool. And I don't think a lot of people know that, so.
Right. No, I didn't. I totally didn't know that. I was just captivated by the cinematography of it. And, like, just the sort of churning feel to the story. Like, the story is pretty basic. Like, there's really not much of a story to it, but the way that it's told just captivated me. Sitting, I wish I had seen it in the theater, because I was sitting just watching it on my television, and like, oh my god, if I could see this in the theater, I'd just be so happy, because it's one of those movies that, like Mary Beth said, it is kind of boring, but it just kept the imagery and the music on screen just kept my attention the entire time. And there's some pretty gnarly moments of like,
it is
horror.
Pretty gnarly. I mean, I just wish it had gone a different way or something. It felt like very cut and dry kind of story, which is, I mean, you know what? That's fine. I don't think I needed another story like that personally.
Yeah. And that's fair.
But it was beautiful. It's like absolutely gorgeous. It won a bunch of awards in Apocalypse too.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And I mean, like, again, the cultural context part is, I think, really important and really cool. Like, it is a very important movie.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, one more.
Cool.
And I think it's coming out. I want to say IFC Midnight might have picked it up.
Okay.
The Wretched.
Oh, I don't know if I've heard of this one. No, I might have. Continue. Please tell me what it's about.
It's kind of a mix of like the comic Witches with Suburbia, like Disturbia.
Witches.
So it's about this teenage boy who is struggling with his parents' divorce.
Okay.
And he moved to this to visit his dad during the summer. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the neighbors next door went hunting and brought something back that is like this witch that gets in people, like literally in people, and kind of takes them over in like some kind of gnarly body horror type ways.
This sounds beautiful.
So there's like two stories going on of like the next door, because you see it from the next door neighbor's perspective, where like there's some really creepy moments involving a baby cam.
Oh, hell yeah.
And just sort of like the mother who's being possessed by this witch, just the kind of like body horror that she's going through. And then you also get the sort of like Rear Window / Disturbia story of the kid that's like, he's a delinquent, he's breaking rules, no one believes him that his next door neighbors is a 1,000-year-old witch. And they sort of like get on a collision course together. And I really, really dug it. It's a lean, like 90-minute thriller, but it's a lot of fun. And I think I saw it at Fantasia, and I want to say that it's coming out from IFC Midnight.
Okay.
Not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me, but I think they bought it, and I think it's coming out relatively soon, like first quarter of next year.
Hold on. Let me check. I'm going to check really quick, because I really want to see it. The Wretched movie.
Yeah. But it is...
Okay,
it is,
yes, I've seen the cover, and I was like, I need it.
Yeah.
In my life right now. I don't see any. Well, if we find it, we'll tweet about it or update it if we know the actual release date, because I can't find it.
Yeah, I don't think they've necessarily announced the release date, but I want to say that they kind of are positioning it. Yes, IFC picked it up. Don't know when it's coming out, but next year at some point.
Awesome. Well, please look out for that, everyone, because the fucking
a lot
poster,
of fun.
It looks real good.
Just lean mean.
I love that. Honestly, and that's one back to Black Christmas. One of the reasons I loved it, it was a lean 90 minutes.
Yeah. It's so important right now.
I just, you know what? I appreciate a long movie, but I honestly really more often appreciate a nice 90-minute story. So
Yes.
okay,
All right.
so 2019, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was the year of the Stephen King adaptation. We got like what, 4 of them this year?
We got 4 of them this year?
Yeah, I think so. We got Pet Sematary.
Oh shit, I forgot.
We got It Chapter 2.
Okay.
We got
In the
Tall Grass and Dr. Sleep.
Oh my god, you're right. I didn't even put together. Whew. Wow, we really did get a lot of Stephen King adaptations.
We got that. We got the sophomore features from a lot of
yes, we did.
really awesome directors, including Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, Eggers. I can't remember what his first name is because there's the writer and then there's the director whose last name is Eggers, and I always get them too confused. Robert Eggers.
Yeah.
And then we also had The Nightingale from Jennifer Kent.
What a good movie.
Have not seen it yet.
It's on Amazon now, so you have no excuse not to.
I know.
Just kidding, you do, because it's really hard to watch. It is like traumatizing. It's a very difficult 2.5, and that's 2.5 hours long. So,
well, going back to that 90 minutes thing, I see that it's 2.5 hours, and I know that it is about rape revenge, and that is one of the genres that I just do not. I mean, I know people don't really take joy in it, or normal people probably don't take joy in those type of movies, but like, I can't. That's not something that I'm going to go search out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I have not a fascination, but I think rape revenge is one of my like research topics from grad school in terms of how it's handled by female directors, and what it means to make rape revenge movies now. So that's why I think it's such an important movie. But it also is a very difficult movie to watch, and like there are a lot of criticisms about the brutality, which I understand. I think the brutality is important, but I also understand why it is so upsetting to people, because it is like very intense. But anyway, I digress. I apologize.
No, it's one of those things. It's like everyone has a different reaction to them, and I remember reading B.J. Colangelo. Yeah, Colangelo. She had her blog, The Day of the Woman, and she always finds those types of movies therapeutic. And there's different reactions to it, and no reaction is wrong.
No, not at all.
It's just not a genre that I actively go search out, even though last year Revenge was one of my top movies of the year. Such a good movie. I just 2.5 hours.
That's a lot, and it's brutal. Like, and the thing is, with a lot of rape revenge movies, it's very fantastical, so you can kind of divorce yourself from it. In terms of it being like it's very much like Revenge, MFA, Holiday. There are movies about like fantasy and catharsis in terms of like they're not real, but there's like a separation. The Nightingale is very historical. It's very much based on historical fiction, so there isn't that kind of quasi fantastical element that you can kind of look at. Like, it's all just fucking real and depressing. So that is another reason why it's so goddamn grim, because it's like, this happened. Like, this is not something we can just pretend is like a fantasy, like fantastical, like over the top story. It's actually like the reality of many women then, and maybe even now. So it is a hard watch.
It also tackles racism, right? With the
Jesus,
Aboriginals.
yes. There's a lot of stuff about like the treatment of Aboriginal people. It's interesting because it creates
which is a huge thing in Australia.
Yeah, and it continues to be like a huge problem. Jennifer kind of basically made this movie to be like, we cannot ignore the awful colonial past of Australia and how we absolutely ravaged the indigenous population of this continent. It's pretty intense. I mean, it's like she just is saying a lot in it that it's very important, but it's just like the things she has to say are not pleasant, and it's basically trying to hold a mirror up to society, being like, "Hey, we've done some really awful shit, so we should confront it." So it, again, like you said, completely understandable if people don't want to seek it out because it is a hard watch. But if you are interested, it's a very good movie. It's just like I said, it's not something you should put on if you're like not feeling your best.
Right. And it's not, so like it's one of those movies, it's been on my queue. I actually bought it when it came out digitally. So like I own it.
You supported her. Prime. You supported Jennifer Kent.
Hell yeah, I do. I love her.
Hell yeah.
I just got to be in the right mood.
It's not the Babadook. It's not the Babadook.
No.
Don't go in there thinking it's going to be like that. It's not.
Right. So this year, how do you think it compares to last year, Mary Beth?
I feel like I had a much harder time picking my top 10 than last year. I think there were more choices for me. But the other thing is, this year I had more access to festival screeners. Mm-hmm. Last year I wasn't as active in that scene as in this scene and getting as engaged with like indie horror releases. So that might have something to do with it. But also at the same time, I feel like there were more challenging narratives this year, and in terms of being just like complex and not shying away from things. I think this year is really like with a lot of these sophomore features. I think a lot of people, their voices are starting to really be heard, and I think there's a lot of risks that have been taken that are being rewarded this year. I think Shudder picked up a lot of movies that took a lot of risks and really put them out to a bigger audience and got them a lot of love that they wouldn't have gotten before. I think international horror is getting even more attention than it used to. I just think this year is when a lot of people's voices were heard more than the usual. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think this year showed a big step in the right direction in terms of diversifying horror, not only in directors, but in terms of the stories that these filmmakers wanted to tell.
Yeah.
That's just how I felt.
No, that's I don't disagree. I had a harder time personally picking out my list this year because I don't know. Last year just really hit me with the quality of movies that like sort of were in my wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. That like this year there was a lot of really good movies about big ideas. Mm-hmm. And I loved that I saw a lot more diversity, but when I was looking back through my letterbox of the movies I saw this year, the movies that kind of excited me more are a lot of festival movies that are coming out probably next year, more so than the movies that I saw that came out this year. So I kind of had an opposite problem, I think. But that said, I think there are some really fantastic movies that came out this year. It felt like there was a lot more highs and lows. Like there's a lot of really great movies, and then a lot of movies that I will probably never think of again. You know?
Yeah, that's fair. I think this year I plunged into things with like more optimism than 2018 because I was covering more festivals, and I think I kind of just like maybe had a naive optimism around things. I don't know, but I think this year was amazing. I think there some amazing stuff that came out this year.
It's a good way to end the decade.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it kind of feels emblematic of the last half of the decade too. But we'll kind of get to that soon. Before we get to a top 10, I know you had a hard time narrowing it down. What did you have? A couple runner-ups or some honorable mentions?
Yeah,
that you want to discuss?
I did. I had a couple honorable mentions that like. Just had a really hard time with this one, because the thing is, a lot of my list is like smaller stuff. So there's two honorable mentions. Crawl, which was the Alexandra Aja movie about alligators. I really enjoyed it. It was so much more fun than I had ever expected it to be. I just think that there were more effective horror movies that came out this year that were on my top 10. This would be my top 15 for sure, but it wasn't as affecting as some of the other stuff in my top 10. It was fun, good monster bullshit, and it's awesome. But I think my top 10 are films I chose that had more emotional resonance with me. And so Crawl didn't necessarily have emotional resonance other than it was really fun, and I am so glad I saw it, and then I'm glad that monster movies are fun again. Midsommar, I had a lot of... I mean, y'all have probably read my bullshit about this on the internet. I by no means hated it. I think it is obviously a runner-up. I think it's a good movie. I think it handles mental illness in a really... for me, in a disrespectful way, especially because I saw it right after I received a bipolar disorder diagnosis. I think it tried to do too much, but I still, it's still Ari Aster. I love him. He's fucked up. I saw it twice. It gave me a very intense emotional reaction, which I respect. But it wasn't. I talked about having my top 10 being emotionally resonant. This one just like hit me in the wrong way, I think.
Yeah.
Depraved, Larry Fassenden's.
Oh, yes.
Reimagining of Frankenstein. I love that movie. I just think it's so well done and it was very cool. Seek that out. And then Jennifer Reeder's Knives and Skin. It almost it's like my number 11.
Oh yeah.
It's not really horror. It's more like Twin Peaks, David Lynchy, but like with a very like feminist twist to it. It's very good. It just came out December 6th on VOD. It's weird. It's bizarre. It's awesome. It just narrowly missed out on my list. But yeah, those are the 4 of my runner-ups. What about you, Terry?
Okay. So I did have Crawl in mind.
Okay.
I think I had such a good time with that film. I love aquatic horror. I'm so glad to see that we've been between that and 47 Meters Down and Caged, which wasn't as successful, but it was still fun. And then Underwater coming out.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
January.
excited. There's a big underwater poster at my movie theater that I keep walking by, and I'm so hype.
I am very hyped for that one. It'll probably be bad, but I can't wait to see it.
Don't do that.
I know, it's just January horror movies. I'm always approaching them with some trepidation.
I know, I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to say it.
But I mean, the cast is both great and terrible at the same time. I mean, I love
so
Kristen
right.
Stewart, but then it has fucking T.J. Miller in it,
T.J. Miller, sorry.
who's canceled and has been for a while. He probably filmed this movie before he was canceled. I don't know, but
Probably.
yeah. So
Anyway.
I'm going to see that for my birthday because my birthday's the 14th, so I'm really excited.
Yay.
But yeah. So anyway, Crawl. Crawl was on it. Harpoon was also on it.
Okay.
I was really sad that didn't make my top 10.
Okay.
But I kind of looked at my top 10 as I did last year with movies that resonated with me, or that I had an emotional attachment to for the most part. And then I almost included this one, but I focused on movies. But Horror Noir, the documentary.
Oh yeah.
In my first list, it kind of had a space on it, but I really just wanted to focus on more of the fiction narratives than documentaries. So it's not on it, but I think it's a very important movie or documentary that came out this year that I think people need to see. And then another movie. What's that?
I agree. I think horror noir is like a very important thing that people need to watch and understand. Like, it actually got me to watch a lot of movies I hadn't heard of before, and I think it just needs to, like, people. It's just people need to realize like the history of horror. And it doesn't even highlight all the good things of like representation of African Americans in horror, and it's just very good.
Yeah, I agree. And then the last one that I'll bring up, which I think. I don't know. I think some people might be surprised it's not on the list. Everyone has like a different reaction to this movie. And I'm curious if it's on yours at all. But Us, the Jordan Peele movie.
It actually is on my list.
Okay, so we'll talk about that when you get to it. But I almost included it. It was one of those that I just, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think our list might be more different than I was expecting.
It quite possibly will be.
Yeah.
Which would be good.
It'll be I'm excited to hear what you have, because I also have Harpoon on my top 10 list.
I figured you did. It was almost on mine.
Yeah. So this will be interesting. I'm very excited because we have not talked about this, listeners. Like, we did not share with each other what is on the list. And just as a heads up, everyone, our number one, we are not telling you our number one today. We will be revealing our number one on our Best of the Decade episode next week. So if you want to hear our number one of 2019, you have to listen to next week's episode.
Yep. And we're doing that because, I mean, we're talking about the decade and we don't want to have repeat content for people. So just figured we'd keep it for that. Keep you in suspense a little longer.
Keep you in suspense, and then you'll get to hear double the people talk about it next week.
Yes. It's going to be a good episode.
It'll be a really good episode. So I guess
Top
we'll just
10.
start with our 10. So do we want to do it back and forth? 10,
Yes.
10. Oh, it's perfect. So what is your number 10 of 2019?
My number 10 is a movie that wasn't going to be on this list, and then I rewatched it this weekend, and I think it is totally my shit. It is called The Dead Center, and I'm guessing it's not on your list.
It's not.
I don't know if you've even ever seen it.
I don't even think I've heard of it. Hold on. Tell me about it.
And that's partly why it's on my list.
Okay.
Because my first two on this list are kind of movies that I don't feel people are talking about. And The Dead Center, I saw it back in Telluride Horror Show last year. And I didn't get a review of it done at the time because I was so overwhelmed by the amount of movies I watched. And let me just say that 2018 Terry was clueless on on getting reviews out on a timely basis, because like that was only maybe 10 movies. And I mean, now I've gone to watched Fantasia Fest where it was like 30 movies in like a very short period. So, but I didn't get a review done, but it was extremely my shit. It's opens up with a body being carted to the morgue. It was a recent suicide victim. And then after the morgue attendant leaves, the body bag just starts jerking around, and the deceased person stumbles out of the morgue into one of the hospital beds, and he's found catatonic the next day, and he gets taken to an emergency psych ward where a doctor sort of like starts to talk to him and figures out that there's something wrong with him. He has something inside of him, and meanwhile, there's a medical examiner that's trying to track down where the fuck the body went. And so you sort of follow the two on their journey of discovering what is going on with this man that came back alive. And it's a slow burn, paranoid thriller, has a very small budget, but it kind of reminds me of the 70s paranoia films at the time. Okay. And it's, even though it's not about the kind of subject matter of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it kind of reminds me of that kind of like paranoia where like one doctor is trying to convince people that some bad shit is going down and no one is believing him, and he's falling further and further into this like paranoid kind of issue. I really dug it, especially the second time watching it. It's I think it's a really interesting movie that I don't think many people saw.
Okay. I would like to watch it. It sounds very good. So
I kind of wish it had a bigger budget.
Okay.
But, you know, it is what it is. And for what it is, I think it's really good.
Cool. Okay. Well,
what's your number 10?
My number 10 is Braid.
Okay.
Which came out this year. Pretty small release. It's directed by Mitzi Pironi. And it stars Madeline Brewer. Who was in Cam last year, and I absolutely love this movie. It's a fucking acid trip, weird, nuts, crazy thing. These two girls like need money, and they're like, "Oh, we'll just go rob our weird old friend." But their friend they have to play a game with their friend. It's like house, and the friend is just like, played by Madeline Brewer, is just like pretty psychotic, and she has to do all these weird. I don't know. It's just so fucking weird, but it's so pretty, and it's bizarre, and it just is all out weird, and man, oh man, did I absolutely fucking love that movie. So that's why it's on my number 10.
Awesome. I have not seen it.
It's just so good. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I kept hearing like conflicting opinions on it, so I'm glad to hear that you really liked it, because I've been meaning to. It's been on my list. I want to say that it's on either Hulu or Amazon or some streaming service.
Yeah,
right now.
it's on. I can't remember which one, but it's on there.
So I am gonna watch it, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. So
it looked kind of psychedelic. Like I saw some of the screens, and it's like very. A lot of purples, a lot of bright colors.
There's a lot of just like people doing drugs and then totally getting fucked up, and then like things change color, and it's so ridiculous. But like I think what I was really excited about this year was a number of female directors giving the opportunity to make such weird choices. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I included it. I just thought it was, and Madeline Brewer is like all out ridiculous, and I just love her so much. So it was just amazing to see her get to play this like completely ridiculous, like over the top character, and it was amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really think she's a good actress, and she's been she's been in some really good stuff. She was in Hustlers this year too,
Yes,
and she was one of my favorite kind of side characters in it.
Yeah, she was really good in Hustlers. I was so excited to see her in that movie. I was like, oh my
Yeah, I was
god,
so
my girl, she's
surprised.
in big movies now. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
awesome.
Cool. Okay, so number 9.
All right, number 9. For me, so this is another movie that I don't hear a lot of people talking about.
Okay.
And I have a kind of a problem with it because
Okay.
it's a Cinestate movie.
Okay.
And their movies kind of bother me because as a gay person, they tend to focus on narratives that feature some uncomfortably racist, misogynistic, and homophobic characters. But they always seem to have they're really well done. Mm-hmm. And so this movie is one of those movies. It's called The Standoff at Sparrow Creek.
Oh, cool. I've heard so much about that this year.
It's a very interesting movie that is very intense without having much action in it. And truthfully, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I saw it earlier this year.
Okay.
Because I think it came out in January, so it was an early release last year this year, I guess. They're not done with this year yet. But basically the idea is that it's a militia group that has to go into hiding after they hear reports that there is an attack at a police funeral. And the shooter used an AR-15, had Kevlar and had explosives, and then coincidentally, an AR-15 is missing from their stock, so is a Kevlar vest, and so are some grenades. So the killer is one of them, and they must discover which of them is the killer before the police rain down on them and everything.
Wow.
So, like, you take the side of a militia that is a half a degree away from being white supremacist. Like, there are some white supremacists in it. So
Okay.
we're already kind of focusing on a story of people that I don't like and a a perspective of, and it kind of goes for that both sides argument. Like, yes, they're bad, but so are these cops that are trying to hunt them. So, like, I find it very problematic, and I found most of the movie problematic.
Okay.
But that said, I think it has some interesting things to say about the way false information gets disseminated and kind of like the whole fake news aspect of what is going on in our society. And it's very skillfully done, and it was very intense, and I found myself on the edge of my seat the entire time.
Okay.
And it had the twist always surprised me, and the acting is phenomenal. There's a bunch of character actors that we've seen in so many different movies just at the top of their game. I thought it was a very well done movie about people that I absolutely hated.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So those are my two that I don't think people are talking about.
Okay. Cool.
And what about you for your number 9?
My number 9 is Knife Plus Heart.
Okay.
Oh no! Do you not like
No.
Knife Plus Heart?
Oh my god, no, I love Knife
Okay,
Plus
good.
Heart.
Okay. Knife Plus Heart is so good. I'm assuming it's on your list somewhere higher up.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it. For me, on my perspective. So go ahead.
Okay. Knife Plus Heart is it came out last year. It was making the festival circuit, and it finally hit Shudder. Mm-hmm. And Knife Plus Heart is a fucking amazing movie. It's so gay.
It's so gay.
So gay. And it's gay men and lesbians and trans people, and it is just gay, gay, gay. And that's what I want in my horror movies. But it's like gay without it being annoying, which is not like, because it, and a lot of times like straight directors make like gay characters into stereotypes and into like caricatures. But this is just like, these people are people and they just happen to be gay. Like, it's just, and it's about gay porn, and it's about like love and weird psychosexual killers. It's very much like a giallo film from the 70s. It's got a lot of that crazy color palette. There's a dildo knife. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It is a beautiful movie. It is an important movie, and it is such a good movie. It's like a weird giallo gay slasher, and it fucking rules. And you should watch it on Shudder. That's what I have to say about Knife Plus Heart.
Absolutely. I don't want to say too much because it might be on my list up higher.
Okay.
But I agree with everything you just said. It's go watch this. Go get Shudder. Get a free month.
It's so
go enjoy
good.
it.
It showcases like you can make a queer horror movie and it'll be a really fucking good queer horror movie. And we all knew that, but it's just like it's proof to people who like just seem to want to say that like, oh, making things queer is not a good thing. It's like, no, this is like unapologetically gay, unapologetically lesbian, unapologetically trans. It's just like phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And it just makes me happy.
And the score is phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
By M83, the band.
Oh, it's good. Anyway, please watch it.
Yeah.
Anyway, next.
Awesome.
Number 8.
This one is a dark horse as well for me, but it's Hagazusa.
That was this year?
That was this year.
Oh, I thought that was 2018. Oh,
nope, it cannot.
I love Hagazusa.
Do you?
Oh, it's not on my list because I forgot. I saw it in 2018 and I didn't even think about it. But anyway, well,
so
it's
good. It's one of those movies that has had quite a divisive response to it.
Yes.
And a lot of people think it's very boring, and I found it incredibly boring on my first watch.
Okay.
To the point that like I was zoning out through most of it, and in order to get my review done, I had to sit down and watch it a second time.
Uh-huh.
And on my second viewing, I absolutely fell in love with it.
It's such a good movie.
Because it has this like oppressive feeling of menace that got under my skin.
Yeah.
And it actually gave me nightmares.
Oh wow.
Which doesn't happen. When I was a kid, I used to have nightmares after movies, but like I'm very detached now, I guess, because like having seen so many movies that like once I'm in a movie, if I'm in a movie, it scares me, but then after the movie's over, it's very easy for me to just compartmentalize and just cut it off. But some of the imagery in this movie just fucked me up.
It's fucking disturbing.
Yeah, and so it starts off as this little girl who's living with her dying mother outside of this town, and everyone in the town thinks that they're witches, or thinks that her mother is a witch. And so it's set in like 15th century Europe, so it's about the time where like, there's the oppression of women, and there's all this kind of stuff going on that like sort of feeds into it, but in the opening, there's like it's very terrifying and overtly sexual with like the mother in like a very disturbing way that I just can't get out of my head.
Yeah.
And then the mother dies, and we see the girl as a grown up, and she's fighting the same. It's like a cycle of misogyny, because we see her now dealing with the same shit that her mother had to deal with, where everyone in town thinks that she's a witch, and she kind of finds someone that maybe she has a connection with. And then it just goes from there. But like comparisons can be made to The Witch in terms of like theme for sure, and I think it's a lot slower paced than The Witch, so people that thought The Witch were slow will probably zone out in this movie. But like the imagery that it uses in the first act and then in the third act, as things get
fucking weird,
wild, just lingered in my head in a way that movies don't do anymore.
It really got to me. I cried.
Yeah,
I cried.
I can see that.
And I consider this, I won't give spoilers, and this might be like a vague kind of spoiler, but I consider this a rape revenge movie.
I can completely see that.
It is 100% a rape revenge movie, and I really want to write an article about it if it hasn't been written. But anyway, it's such a good movie. It's beautifully shot, and it's so upsetting. And there's a scene that is very similar to Possession in the subway scene.
Yep. Yes, there is. And if you consider the fact that this was like a film thesis project.
Right?
That this is the guy's first film, and it was a graduation film.
I can't wait for him to make more movies. I cannot wait for him to make more movies.
And it's so fucking assured, and so like just whether you like it or not, the fact that the person that is graduating from college and this is his first movie and this is his film thesis is able to put out something like this for school. I mean,
I know.
This is another, Ari Aster in the making.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, I
And
really can't wait to see what he does next.
He's Austrian, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
So I'm
Lucas Feigelfeld.
Yeah,
I think is his name.
I think so.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Very excited to see what he makes next because Hakuzusa is like a fucking daring, amazing debut. If you don't like slow movies, don't see it. But it's gorgeous.
Yeah, lingered in my mind. I still think about it today.
It's haunting. Like, it is a movie that will haunt you. It would be on my list if I remembered it was from this year. But here we are.
Here we are.
Making mistakes.
Mistakes were made. But what's your number 8?
My number 8 is the Japanese film One Cut of the Dead.
Oh, yes.
Such a good movie. One Cut of the Dead is a movie I saw last year that got acquired by Shudder this year, and it is amazing. It is split into 2 parts, and I'm reluctant to tell you what it's about because it's so much better going into it not knowing, but let's just say the beginning features, I think, like a 38-minute long take, no cuts. And it is perhaps the most impressive thing I've ever seen. And so it begins as like kind of a zombie horror and goes into comedy. And it's just, again, and like another thing, like daring. And it was a movie I got as a screener that I was like, oh, this will be like another zombie movie. But I was absolutely entranced. Like, phenomenal film that everyone who has Shudder or should get Shudder should see. Because, again, they're giving us access to some amazing films this year. So, yeah, that's my number 8.
I agree. That's a good choice.
Yeah. Number 7?
Number 7. For me, this is a movie that I'm so glad I was able to watch before we did our list. It's The Lighthouse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So thank you, A24, for coming through in a pinch, because I was able to get a screener of this, and I watched it recently, and this movie is bizarre as fuck.
That is an understatement.
It is a complete left turn from the guy that brought us The Witch. So, it's a movie about a man named Ephraim, who goes to work at a lighthouse run with ruthless efficiency by Thomas, the lighthouse keeper. And what follows is an intense character drama between the two men who alternately hate and love each other. And it's about toxic masculinity. It's also about intimacy and the fear of intimacy between men. It's very homoerotic. It's
so gay. It's just so gay. It's such a gay movie. I love it.
Yeah, there's a part where Ephraim is like fantasizing and he sees this like mermaid creature, but it gets superimposed with this image of this blonde-haired lad, and they sort of kind of conflate into one another as he's jerking off. And there's something to that I think I was digging into and trying to find interviews with Eggers about this, and he's like, I'm just going to keep that to myself. But like, I have a feeling that this movie is about this attraction between the two men that they're unafraid or unwilling to explore.
Yeah.
And it explodes into violence and paranoia, and it's a fascinating movie. And I think it's quite a swing for the director. I don't think if The Witch had been as successful as it was, that this is a movie he probably never would have been able to make. And I think it's so amazing that he was able to get this done, because it's completely uncommercial.
It is. It's wild. I need to watch it again because I didn't dislike it when I saw it at TIFF, but I was taken aback. I think I need to watch it again to really appreciate it. I think I went in expecting something different. I think I wanted more of something I didn't get, which is fine. But
right.
It's stinky. It's like so. It's just like it's an assault on the senses. It is a movie that is like stinky and wet and loud and gross, and it's like it's so impressive the way he creates those sensations through film. And the craft behind it, like it's just impeccably made. The craft is amazing. Costuming, set design, the soundscape of like this foghorn and the screaming seagulls, like it is beautifully done, like designed. I don't know how sold I am on the story, but I liked it. I think it was cool. I think it was like a really daring thing, and I'm glad he got a chance to make it.
Mm-hmm. I also think that might be why I enjoyed it more than some people, because I had some. I mean, I just saw this like 2 weeks ago, so like I had some time away from the hype of, you know, the festival runs and the initial disappointment where people were expecting it to be. I mean, not to get into spoilers, but people were expecting it to be a little bit more Lovecraftian and more reaching into this more horror stuff than it ultimately does. And so I went in expecting that to not be as
that definitely that's definitely helpful, I think.
Yeah. But I thought the acting was phenomenal. I found it to be absolutely hilarious.
There's a lot of farting.
There's a lot of farting.
There's a lot of farting.
But like, there's like a line where like he's like, "You don't like me, lobster?" Because he's complaining about the cooking or something, and it just I don't know. It really like tickled my funny bone, and I love movies about homoeroticism.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So my number 7 may be also kind of about eroticism. Harpoon is my number 7.
Yes.
Harpoon, it is not just on my list because we interviewed Rob Grant. Just wanted to put that out there. Harpoon was a big like dark horse for me. I think it resonated so much as me because I have been in like friendships like that where I have been dating someone, not exactly the same, but like I've dealt with like dating someone and also being friends with the other guy and feeling like the in-between of the two of them and being treated like a piece of meat. And I think it really captures that dynamic very well. I think it really captures this like nice guy, toxic masculinity dynamic in a really important way. And I think the chemistry between the actors is amazing. The premise is these 3 friends, it's 2 men and a woman, have this very volatile friendship. It's full of like fighting and violence, but also drinking and being like fucked up around each other. And they go on a boat trip. The boat runs out of gas. They're stuck on this boat, and then secrets start coming out. And it sounds like pretty basic, but it's badass. I just thought it was an amazing film. I think the reason like I said, it really gets to that core of like friendship dynamics, and especially when it's like a mixed gender friendship dynamic and what can really happen within that. And also looking at sources of toxic masculinity and inherited like not generational trauma necessarily, but like how these things they don't just pop up overnight, but how these kinds of perspectives around women and getting what you want is cultivated by parents and by your surrounding, like by your life, rather than just popping up overnight because of the internet. So
yeah, I agree. And this actually probably, I think, originally was in this spot, number 7. So for me too. So it's a little weird that it got knocked out, but I was kind of hoping you would have it on here so we could talk about it.
I got it.
But I love this movie. I think it's really funny.
It's really funny.
Like it's my kind of humor, that sort of dark, very caustic, nihilistic humor.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's staged as with the narrator kind of giving us insights and like hilariously mocking this group of people.
Yeah.
Just I think it's a great movie, and I'm really glad that you included it on yours.
Yeah. Me too.
It's so good. It's so good.
It is so good. Okay, number 6.
Number 6. My number 6 is One Cut of the Dead.
Oh, look at that. Okay. Okay. Cool.
And
finally some overlap.
Yeah, right?
It's surprisingly wanting to get overlap.
I think we're going to run into some more as we get into our top 5.
I think so too,
but yeah, so One Cut of the Dead. I know Mary Beth didn't want to spoil anything, so all I'll say is if you've seen Noises Off, you kind of know what you're getting into with this movie. The first 38 minutes is this long take that I know a lot of people, some people are like, you watch this movie after it's been hyped, and you're in the first 38 minutes, and you're like, what the fuck are people talking about? Because there's something off about it.
Yes.
And you get to the end of it, and you're like, okay, what Why do people love this movie?
Ha 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 ha.
And then it's all about the payoff. And there's just the last half of the movie is nothing but payoff for the stuff that happens in the first 38 minutes. And it is a love letter to indie filmmaking.
It's fucking genius. It's just so good.
It really is. And the way it's structured is just, it's so perfect once you get to the end. And the fact that it was made with like, I think it cost $25,000 to make. It was a cast of no one in this movie is very big for the most part. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it was shot in 8 days, and it was just, it's just this ode to indie filmmaking and getting out there and doing it. And if this person can just go out there and make something like this, that it just gives me so much hope for the future of independent filmmaking, which I love. I'm a huge proponent for it, and it's one thing that like I like to cover on my site more so than the big, studio releases. I love independent film, and to just see the trials, the tribulations, the frustrations, the ridiculousness that you have to go through to get that one shot in this movie, just fucking, it's so good.
It's so
so good.
Well, it's made back its money like in ridiculous amounts. I think it's a big hit in Japan too. Yes,
it was huge. It's been huge everywhere it's gone.
Yeah, which is so exciting. Again, for indie filmmaking.
Yeah, and it's on Shudder, so you should go watch that too.
Yeah.
So that was my number 6. What about you?
My number 6 is Bliss.
Ah, yes.
Bliss is Joe Bagos'. Is this his first movie?
It's not his first movie. It's his third.
Third. Okay, apologies. I couldn't remember. But it's this amazingly. It's this. I think I was really into psychedelic stuff this year. I don't know. A lot of my stuff is like weird and colorful and like psychedelic and messed up and bizarre. This is like that, and it's like about an artist who is a total asshole. Like, she yells at everyone, she's caustic, but she doesn't really care. Like, she's kind of a badass in that way, and she's really struggling to get inspiration for her art, and then she takes this drug called Bliss, and she gets fucked up with her friends, and then something happens with her friends, and she is turned into a vampire, and it's this very bloody, fucked up, psychedelic, drug-fueled blood feast. And the more blood she consumes and the more bliss she does, the better her paintings turn out. And it's this really interesting look at like LA art scene, and it's really, it's a trip. It is so good. It is so fun. It is like intense. It is kind of sexy in a fucked up way. Yeah, this has been talked about by a lot of people, but it is just as good as everyone is saying. And I'm so glad I snuck it in towards the end of last month so I could talk about it.
Yeah, and it's actually been on almost every single one of our podcast episodes. We have mentioned
that's
this
true.
movie.
We have mentioned it quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's only fair that it shows up again.
Yeah, so I loved it.
It's a good choice.
And I'm a sucker for vampire movies too, so that helps.
What?
Me?
You are?
I like vampire movies? Me?
What?
Her? Who is she? Who is she? Anyway.
Okay. So number 5.
Number 5.
Mine. So the top 5, I didn't really have a huge problem with my 6 through 10.
Okay.
But my top 5, this went through so many different permutations because I think all of these movies are, I think in any year, any of these movies could have been number 1. Mm-hmm. It's just, they just all sort of happened to come out the same year.
Yeah.
And so I kind of go back and forth on the order of it, but my number 5 is Daniel Isn't Real.
Okay. It's on my list, but I won't tell you where.
Yeah. I would be surprised if it wasn't. So it is about a college freshman named Luke who suffered a tragedy when he was a kid, and as a result had an imaginary friend that just sort of steps into the picture at a moment of very violent trauma. And Daniel is his imaginary friend that sort of helps him as his only friend when he's a kid. and sort of kind of makes him feel more confident about himself. But then starts to push him to do things that aren't good. And so as a result, he has to lock him up symbolically in this dollhouse. And when he's an adult, he ends up having to face Daniel, his imaginary friend,
really
who is
hot
now unleashed and is a grown-up who is everything that Luke wants to be. He's sexy, he's confident, he's able to manipulate people, he's able to do things that Luke would never be able to do. And again, there's sort of this underlying malice to him. And the movie is about a lot of things. It's about mental illness. I think it has a lot of interesting things to say about struggling with a family member who's suffering it, and then the fear that you might also have that kind of genetic trait to be more discernible for it. There's a lot of homoeroticism in this movie.
Yep.
There's a lot of body horror. It definitely takes into account sort of like a Lynchian, Silent Hill-esque approach to some very visual horror aspects. It's just, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I'm kind of surprised it's at number 5 for me because it could have easily been higher.
Yeah, I'm surprised at number
it.
5. I thought it would be higher for you.
I love it.
I'm very curious. See what else is there. Yeah, Daniel Isn't Real is high up for me. I won't talk about it.
Yeah, I figured it would be. But yeah, that's my number 5.
Cool. My number 5 is Us. Jordan Peele's sophomore debut. I think I liked it a lot more than a lot of people did. I think people were disappointed with it compared to Get Out. I think it's much more complex than Get Out. Just like in terms of, I think Jordan Peele's starting to do a lot more with it. And it was and Lupita Nyong'o in it is absolutely fucking spot on. Her and Elizabeth Moss kill it in this movie. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a film about a black family who goes on vacation, and something like weird things start happening, and they find out they have tethered versions of themselves, or basically like speechless clones of them who wear red jumpsuits, and they're out to get them for, I will not spoil reasons. It's very weird. I think it's kind of a dense movie. I think I would describe it as a little bit dense. I think there's just like so much happening that it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it in one viewing. But I think just like Jordan Peele is able to hit these crazy thematic stuff so well and in such beautiful and interesting ways. And it gets stuck with me all year. And I just, again, like Lupita Nyong'o is like killing it in horror, and people call her the new Scream Queen, and I'm so into it. Like, she is amazing in this movie. It is just like absolutely beautiful. It begs for repeat viewing, so you can catch a lot of little Easter eggs or things you're not used to seeing. It's a big ode to classic horror. I mean, it just does so much, and that can be to its detriment, I think. But again, like, Peele is such a good filmmaker. He just is really doing some crazy shit, and I absolutely admire and respect him for that. So that's why Us is my number 5.
Yeah. As an aside, shout out to Winston Duke's thighs.
Yes.
He fills out of bed very well.
He fills out those boxers pretty well too.
Hell yeah, he does. Joking aside, yeah, I think part of the reason why a lot of people might struggle with this movie is that I feel like viewers are more literal now than they have ever been.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're so focused on, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, I don't understand how that could happen. Or I think there's a big plot hole here. Like, we're so focused on plot that we kind of aren't paying as much attention to the subtext or paying attention to the themes.
I agree.
Partly because it's more difficult to think about, I guess, than it is to just go in and enjoy the next Marvel movie. No shade to Marvel, but kind of shade to Marvel. But like, I feel like that there's that kind of disconnect because most of the complaints I've seen is like, well, that the third act just didn't make sense, or or this didn't make sense, or I really, there's people living in under the ground, like, but I'm like, do you not see
everyone?
There's like,
just suspend disbelief for a little bit, guys. It's good for
Yeah.
you. Let your mind run
is.
wild. Like, it's okay. You can do that.
yeah. So I kept going back and forth on whether to put this one on my list, because like I mean, if you've been reading my stuff, you know that I wrote an article about this movie.
A very good article about this movie.
Thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
so there's like a personal attachment to it. I don't know. At the end of the day, when I was looking at the movies, I wanted to focus on others, but I'm so glad that it's on your list. I do think it needs to be talked about. I think it is one of the best movies of this year.
Yeah, and I also think Jordan Peele did something where he put a black family in a movie and didn't make it about race, and I think that's also really important. I think it's like there's racial subtext, but at the same time, it's like he didn't make it as where Get Out was very obviously very much about racial tension. This one isn't as much about that, but still puts a black family at the center of the narrative to be like, look, you can put any family in this, like any racial family in the center of it, and it doesn't change it. And I think that's important. Like, we need to be putting, like, making films about black families and these horror situations that aren't just about race, because they're still people. And I think it's a very important thing to see in the genre that is very white.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off that, the thing I think that makes this in some ways a better movie than Get Out, at least from an artistic perspective, is that there's so many different things you can read about it. Like, Get Out had a point. It had a very specific point of what it was trying to say. This, I mean, like I said, I wrote an article about how it kind of reminded me of being stuck in the closet. Like, there's so many different readings people are taking from this, and I think that is what makes art.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I agree. And the more I think about it and hearing you talk about it, the more I feel like I should have included it on my list. But here we are. I mean, that's the problem with lists, right? I think we're talking about art. We're talking about movies that our opinions might change in the future.
Yeah, and
I know my opinions changed on my movies last year.
Yeah, and I just, even looking at my list now, it just feels it feels very reductive, and it is reductive. But I think it's regardless of the order, we're talking about movies that had an impact on us and made us feel things, and I think that's important, regardless of order. I mean, this order is very arbitrary for me, but it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, that's a good choice.
Yeah, number 4.
My number 4 is Bliss.
Okay. I figured you were gonna have it farther up too.
Yeah, this movie just, it knocked me on my ass.
Yep.
I loved it. I loved every single moment of this movie. It just this sort of like kaleidoscope, colorful downward spiral descent into hell, set to a rockin' fucking soundtrack, and just the images that are on screen and the performances, and the fact that Joe Begos, I guess, is known in the industry for being kind of an asshole, and the fact that like he has this female character who being a completely unlikable asshole that is kind of a stand-in for himself, but it's a character that you don't get to see women heroes get to be. Like, she is the protagonist, and she's not very likable, and you don't really get to see that much. And so the fact that it's a gender-bent character, and it's this like just the third act, just the things that happen in it, it was like the violence, the gore, the mix of sex and death, and it pulled me in. And by the third act, I was like, this movie injected into my drugs. I want to be on this kind of bliss that it's on. It's a fucking amazing movie, and it has probably the best last shot in the movie I've seen this year.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So that's my number 4.
Yeah. My number 4.
What about you?
My number 4 is Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Okay.
I finally saw this movie. It came out, so it's been talked about for a couple of years now. I'd missed it at every festival or like any opportunity to see it, but it finally came to Shudder this year. And it's like a dump truck ran over my heart. It's such a good. We've talked about this a couple weeks ago. That this is Issa Lopez's movie about a very real issue of the children who are left behind after their parents are murdered by cartel members, and it's like a fairy tale look at it, but it is very much reflective of a very real and horrifying issue happening in Mexico right now. And she takes the subject matter, and she's still very real, makes it very sad, but still injects this kind of like whimsy to it, like a childlike perspective on it. And it's a very interesting way to look at how kids deal with trauma and how kids are forced to grow up. And it's just a beautiful film. Again, another example of like horror can be political and still very effective. And it shows audiences, like it's the year of international horror, showing audiences things in America that they probably never thought about. And Guillermo del Toro loved it. And it's, again, we talked about this. I think Terry brought this up last week or the week before. It's very similar in a way to Pan's Labyrinth, and showing how children deal with trauma and how children have to grow up very quickly in like these horrifying situations. And it's just absolutely gorgeous and absolutely devastating. Boy, oh boy, did I cry. Whew. Boy. But it's gorgeous. I mean, yeah.
I'm going to piggyback on this because this is my number 3.
Okay, cool. Fair enough.
So we can continue this conversation because, yes, like you said, this movie, it feels like a Guillermo del Toro horror fairy tale. It operates kind of on the same wavelength as The Devil's Backbone and, like you said, Pan's Labyrinth. But what makes this feel a bit more pertinent to me is that while he used the past to kind of make comments on fascism and the horrors of the day, Issa Lopez is ripping things straight from the headlines, and it's focusing on the now, and it feels so much more pertinent this year with everything that's going on with the border and with detention centers and all this kind of like stuff. It feels like this is focusing on characters that don't often get a voice.
Yep.
And that is like the orphans that are left after the cartels come in and kill their parents. And so it's these kids living on the streets. It's these kids having to grow up way too fast and finding found families and trying to come together to survive a situation that no child should ever have to go through. And what I also love about it is that the supernatural aspect of it, the ghosts, are literally the people, the forgotten people that are being killed by the cartels, and all they want is the ability to tell their story. And so the fact that you have this filmmaker that is giving voice to the voiceless is just, it's a powerful movie. And it was on a special mention last year on my top 10 of the year, because at the point when I made that list, I saw it at Telluride again last year, and the fact that it hadn't at that point had any U.S. distribution just really broke my heart, because it had spent so much time. I remember listening to Shockwaves, like I think the year before, and it was doing festival runs there, and it was doing festival runs last year, and it was doing festival runs this year. It's just, this movie is a movie that would not stop. And I think it's so amazing that Shudder picked it up, and I'm so glad that people are able to finally watch it, because it's a very powerful movie.
It is. It's a very powerful movie. And like you said, it gives voices to people that would never have a voice before. And yeah, it's just very good.
Yeah, I love it.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And any other year, it would be my number 1.
Yeah. Anyway.
So that was my number 3. Wow. I think we're getting into it. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Starfish.
Okay.
So
I was wondering if this was going to show up on your list.
I don't know why this movie got under my skin the way it did this year, but I absolutely fucking love Starfish. And like, I am just as full disclosure, Al White, the director, and I are mutuals on Twitter. We are friends. That does not affect this place on this list. I just want to put that out there so everyone knows. I saw this movie, and I was lucky to see it in theaters, because I watched it as a screener, and then he came to Chicago with one of his associate producers to show the film and to talk about it. And
oh wow,
it was really cool. It was awesome. It was like a tiny theater in Chicago called Facets. So if you're in Chicago and want to go to a cool indie theater, Facets, you should go there. And it was just like this amazing experience. And sometimes I have a lot of feelings, and I've talked to Al about this, about like a man directing a woman and like telling a story. But this was such a well done film about looking at grief and experiencing grief and like what grief looks like and really getting into someone's head when they are alone. But then the movie is also about the apocalypse and how the main character sets off the apocalypse while exploring her dead friend's apartment, and then it's like grief and the apocalypse and these really weird stylistic changes and interdimensional changes, and it's such a weird movie, but it is so beautiful and melancholy, and I haven't stopped listening to the soundtrack since I started listening to it when this first came out. It is my favorite soundtrack of any movie, and it's just such an emotion. I have such an emotional attachment to it, I think, in terms of just like being seen as like a female character and like going through these emotions, like these emotional things, and it making it look ugly and beautiful and hard. And it's just a really beautiful portrayal of grief to the backdrop of the apocalypse, and it just stuck with me all year. So it's my number 3.
Yeah, man. It's a movie that I really enjoyed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, enjoyed might not be the right term.
Okay.
Like it's really good.
Yeah,
but like
it's a good first feature.
It really is,
feature film debut,
and
yeah.
it really felt like going through what depression feels like, right? So
yes.
it felt very purposefully. I mean, when I talk about this film, I always feel like I sound negative about it, but it felt kind of aimless. But I think that's purposeful.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that it's the movie itself is emblematic of going through depression, and that feeling of like I don't want to get out of bed, but I kind of have to get out of bed, and that feeling of like I don't know what to do with my life now. Mm-hmm. And there's aspects of that. So I think it's a very well done movie. I agree. I love the soundtrack.
Yeah, I think it helped. I think I saw it at a point in my life, like when I was in grad school and when I was like really kind of starting to really come to terms with perhaps the severity of my mental illness. I think it came out at a right time where I felt very seen and very understood, and felt like I saw how I felt on screen. And I think that had a lot to do with why it's so high on my list and why I enjoyed it so much. I think a lot of times when I see these movies, it definitely helps push them up on my list, just in my emotional state.
Well, that's the good thing about art, right? Like being able to see your journey and your experience on screen and to like connect with something and realize that you're not alone and that there's other feelings out there. I think that's what I love about art.
Yeah, exactly.
And I completely understand why this is on your list.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie.
I've been the very loud champion of this movie too on Twitter, so.
Mm-hmm. I was going to be surprised if it wasn't on your list, to be perfectly honest, because I know how much I know how much it resonates with you, and that's awesome. I think that's good.
All right, okay, this is the last one, guys. Number 2.
Yep, this is the last one for today, and my number 2. I went back and forth on whether this should be a number 1 or number 2, and in the end, I had to go with another choice. But this movie is Parasite.
My number 2 is also Parasite.
Is it really?
Yay! Yes.
Wow, that's awesome. So we can kind of talk about it together, but basically, I think that this is Bong Joon-ho operating at the top of his game. We kind of talked a little bit about it in a previous episode, but I think that everything from his thematic goals to the way he shoots it to the story to everything about it is just amazing, and I love that. I love that a Korean film has been making as much waves as it has been.
I cannot
here
even begin
in the
to
States.
state my excitement about this. Like, Bong Joon-ho is on like Jimmy Fallon. He's on Saturday Night Live. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know why. Like, how this movie pressed the button, but it fucking did, and I'm so happy.
Yeah, like it's weird because when I first saw it, I was like, this is obviously him at his best, but it wasn't my favorite movie of his. And the more I started like thinking about it, the more it like started moving up my list of my favorites of his work. And now I think it's a flat out masterpiece.
It is, and like I've heard people talk about. We can't spoil this because guys, like, you have to see this movie to see it, like, to understand. And like, you might not think it's a horror movie, but like, please just watch it to understand why it's on our list. It is just like the pacing and the characterization and the architecture and like the use of space. Like,
yes,
holy shit! Like, everything is just perfectly planned out. It feels like it's just exquisite the way that he constructs each scene and constructs dialogue, and just creates such a scathing look at the wealth disparity in Korea, and like the way that the rich view the poor, and like the way that people of like who don't have as much money and who aren't affluent are like what they're willing to do to claw their way to the top. Like, it's just, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It sounds so cheesy to say that, but like, this movie did not feel like 2.5 hours. Like,
no.
And like, a lot of Korean movies are this long, and I actually wrote a piece about I Saw the Devil for Nightmare on Film Street, plugging myself, about like another Korean movie, that like these movies are so long, but I think what they do so well is like really capture the human condition in a way that I don't think American cinema does. I think they dedicate a lot of time to capturing the human condition through violence and through like intense states of emotion, whether that be grief or anger or like extreme happiness. And I think like that's what makes Korean movies stick out. There was this piece that came out a while ago that like was very unfortunately naive about Korean movies being vicious and too intense and violent, and not to shame this writer, I don't think she was as familiar with the genre. I think she had an idea for a piece and wrote about a genre of film that perhaps she wasn't totally an expert on, and that's fine, but she basically made it sound like all Asian people are mad, and like that's not the case at all. It was basically like, why are all these Asian movies full of rage? And I'm like, well, it's not just rage. It's like there's a lot that Asian movies say, but she was saying Asian movies and like making it sound like this huge thing, was only talking about like Korean movies, and I'm like, ooh, there's like a lot of weird generalization going on in here, etc. But anyway, Parasite, like, I don't know, that's a whole other conversation, but it's just fascinating how people can see these movies as being totally full of rage, and they're full of rage, but like other emotions too, and like looking at rage in a very nuanced way. It's not just like anger, but it's like anger from like different perspectives and like in very like kind of needling ways, I think.
Yeah, when I went to go see this with my friends, and I kind of told the story already on one of the episodes, but they weren't used to Korean cinema. This might have been the first Korean movie that they had ever seen, and they're watching this and they're laughing through the first half, and they're like, I thought this was a thriller. I thought this was like a horror movie. And I'm like, just wait. Because I knew, without knowing what was going to happen, I knew it was going to take a turn, because that's how a lot of Korean film is. But it's not always just this violence or horror or like that kind of negative emotion like you're talking about. It's full of different emotions. Like, this movie is hilarious.
It is. It's so hilarious. Funny. I feel like Bong Joon-ho is really good at creating these like funny, fucked up stories. You know what I mean? Like The Host sort of has that. Snowpiercer has that. I haven't seen Okja because I refuse. It makes me cry.
Oh God, it's so good.
I know. I need to see it. It just seems, but I just feel like all of his movies are able to strike this really dark balance. The ones I have personally seen.
Yeah. The other thing that his last few movies have been, I would say that they kind of are a little bit more on the cartoony side. Like, not necessarily cartoony, but like just weird characters. Like, you have the Host family that are a little, they're very odd. And then Snowpiercer is just full of just bizarreness. And then you have Okja with like Jake Gyllenhaal playing this manic, nature host. And it just, there's so many like weird out there bizarre characters in it, and then you have this movie that just feels a lot more realistic, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely feels much more grounded in like reality than his previous.
Yeah. And I think I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I'm so glad that he's finally getting a lot of the recognition outside of, in the United States at least. But
I agree, and I also think that it'll maybe hopefully get people more interested in like South Korean cinema or Korean cinema.
Yeah.
I think Old Boy, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, I Saw the Devil, The Handmaiden, Thirst. I'm naming a lot of Park Chan-wook movies. Mother. Actually, you know what we can do? If you guys aren't familiar with Korean horror, I can find a good Letterboxd link and put it in the show notes. So if any of you are interested in more Korean horror, we can plug that, and you guys can see that, because it's really worth digging into. I think some of The Wailing, another one. Some of the best horror movies I've seen are from Korea, and I think they just deserve more love. So
I agree, 100%.
So, and then we will not tell you our first picks. We will tell you those next episode, like we said.
Yeah, but people can probably guess what mine is.
Yeah, people can probably guess what mine is, too. We made it pretty obvious. But
yeah,
it's so funny. I can't believe how different our lists were. I'm actually pretty surprised how different our lists were.
I am too, actually. I was kind of afraid that ours would be very similar and it would just be a lot of repetition, but that's not the case.
Yeah, I actually it's nice. And it's nice to hear like what resonated with us earlier in the year. Because what I wanted to do was really look back at the beginning of the year. Because I feel like I'm so focused on things I saw when I'm trying to cram in 2019, like November, December. I'm like, wait, I need to reach back and really remember what I saw like in February and March, because I had like completely forgot. Thank you to Letterboxd. Shout out to Letterboxd for helping.
I know, right?
Helping my memory.
I don't know how it would survive without Letterboxd.
I know, it's ridiculous. It's just like so helpful for me to actually remember like what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's our favorites of 2019.
Yeah, so thank you. I know it was a longer episode. Thank you guys for sticking with us.
Thank you guys.
And I know that this episode and the next episode isn't our normal routine, but we have some exciting guests lined up as well for 2020. And
2020 is going to be a great year. We're going to start it off with a bang. So I'm excited for all of you guys to hear what we have in store.
Yeah. All right.
So thanks, guys, for listening. Let us know what you think of our top 10 of 2019. What did we miss? What are you excited we included? Make sure to tweet at us at Scarred Podcast or send us an email, scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear what you think of the best movies of 2019 or what your personal best were. So let us know. Thanks for listening, and guys. Stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children.
When you pick up some scratches, cause you want a fun break, the playful way you scratch is the next choice you should make. You can make your dog's leg kick and scratch with that. You could even grab a laser pointer and use your cat. You can build yourself a homemade scratching machine or use a piece from your chess set. Go ahead, grab the queen. Scratch like a DJ with your record player. A cactus could scratch off that scratchable layer. Cause when it comes to scratching, there's a million playful ways. Thanks to scratchers from the California Lottery, a little play can make your day.
Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.